Hello again. Welcome to another edition of CropLife Retail Week. Paul Schrimpf back with Sfiligoj.
Again.
Yeah. So I had a quick trip. I was a day and a half in St. Louis with our friends at John Deere. Had their Develop with Deere Conference where they put all of their dealers in a room with a lot of the companies that they do APIs with. That talk to the ops center that Deere has, and the dealers get a chance to see what kind of tools are out there, what they might want to consider offering, what they're looking at, what some of their farmer customers want, and so forth. It's an interesting experience, and it's just overwhelming. There's just so many different. You get a sense for how difficult it must be to be an equipment dealer, and it's an equipment dealer moment brought to you by. There's so many different things that the farmers, if they're like one of the fast adopting farmers, might bring to them and say, hey, we want to try this, and would it integrate? How does it integrate? And then also maybe some things that they want to offer that the farmers seem to be desiring, but maybe the Deere's offerings don't quite match up or don't match up at all, and it just gets API'd in and kind of tied together. So
okay,
it's I think it speaks to the number of companies there and the number of people there. It was a jam-packed room.
How many do you guess?
Probably 400 or 500 people. I'm probably completely wrong. Probably get an angry phone call, but
I mean that's still very impressive. I mean, given the year we just had in 2019, it sounds like there might have been a little enthusiasm there.
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons that dealers get together, get to talk to each other,
Sure.
kind of compare notes, and a lot of them go for that in particular. But there's a lot of options out there, and trying to understand what they are and be the expert in your region, and whatever those tools are is pretty important. So.
Okay.
So yeah, it speaks to we were talking about the agriculture companies really being the ones taking the lead in technology. That a lot of the investments dried up, companies are starting to go away. They came in with a lot of gangbusters and backed away. A company like Deere, they have the relationship with the customers. They got the dealer network. They've got a software program, the Ops Center, that seems to be getting some traction or has gotten traction. So, folks are choosing up who they're partnering with, and that's interesting that Deere has so much interest, and that's a lot of power to wield out there. So that's interesting. I did talk to a couple of marketing people, and they're reinforcing the notion that equipment dealers and retailers should be partners, should work together very closely. They said that was actually a segment that was in the day before I came. That was a segment that they focused a lot of their attention on training-wise, was equipment dealers and ag retailers working together.
I was going to say, was there any notion of why we haven't seen a closer relationship between these two groups up until now?
Well, I think we've seen some really good examples. It's just a matter of it's a matter of matching up capabilities. I mean, if they haven't had those discussions, I think the equipment dealers, because ag retailers buy equipment, they have to have relationships with the dealer at some level.
Of course, yeah.
But figuring out where the lanes are in terms of where they intersect with the producer and the customer, and how do you kind of divvy up responsibilities. I mean, retailers get the machine data is only going to help with recommendations.
Yeah, of course.
Yes. And the better the machine data and the better the relationship with the machine company, the better the recommendations are for the producer. So I think there's some really great we've seen some really great examples of that working. And agronomy is not something that the Deere seems to want to really get after at all. They haven't really sanctioned that at all as a company, but some dealers are getting into it because there isn't a retailer nearby or a retailer that really embraces agronomy. So they do it because the customers want it, and that's really for the most part, that's the only reason. It's almost never a matter of we're just going to go out there and compete and try to beat them over the head with it. So, from that standpoint, it's really interesting. There'll be more that we talk about in future on the web and in print. But yeah, good stuff. So I can shut up now. Why don't you go ahead and start talking about something else? We're not boring people to death here.
Well, again, talking about equipment, Paul, I know one bit of news we got this week. I know, Paul, you may remember last July, our friends at Unverferth here in Ohio actually made a purchase. They bought the assets from Thurston Manufacturing of the Blue Jet line. And actually now we found out, Paul, that this week they have now purchased Force Unlimited, which is the ProForce AgForce spreader manufacturer that's in Oelwein, Iowa. So, Paul, what was said about that deal was Larry Unverferth, the company president, said, this addition complements our current fertilizer application products and provides us with a complete lineup for agricultural retailers and farmers. So, Paul, I think it's interesting that Unverferth now in the last 6 months has made 2 purchases that put them squarely in the sights of ag retailers who might be looking for products like spreaders and toolbars itself.
Yeah, we haven't seen, there hasn't been a lot new from the company standpoint, or it hasn't been hardly anything new. And it's interesting that someone's coming in from a bit on the outside to try to compete with, the big boys.
Right. Although they did note that Stan Dunkef, who is the founder for Force, is actually staying on in the deal and will be working with Unverferth on developing future Force Unlimited products for them.
Interesting. Very good. Anything else?
Yeah, the one other thing to note, we, of course, have been talking a lot about the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement, the replacement for NAFTA, that has been sort of languishing in Washington, D.C., waiting for Congress to move on it. Paul, we found out at the tail end of 19 that the Senate and the House of Representatives had both approved the agreement finally. And now this week, President Trump has actually signed the agreement into law. So we now have a deal where the United States, Canada, and Mexico will continue to be able to trade goods without any problems. And our friends at ARA, Darren Kopic in particular, thinks this is a good thing. He said agricultural retailers and their customers will directly benefit from the expanded market access and the preserved zero-tariff platforms among ag products. So, and basically I got such, accolades from many trade groups and other folks who were interested in this agreement as well. So, Paul, again, this is, we've had a lot of uncertainty, a lot of questions going on in agriculture this last year and few months regarding trade with places like China. But when it comes to trading here in North America, that will continue without any hiccups at all.
Yep, certainly good news.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the only other thing to add is I did read a report, and of course, we mentioned China, trade agreement that China's been buying a lot of their soybean and corn from places like Brazil. I did read online this week, however, that Brazil now is basically sold out when it comes to their crop for this harvest year. So that if folks are looking for soybean and corn from the country, they'll have to wait until the 2020 harvest comes in.
Yeah, well, that's not the way you want to advance in a trade war, is by having the other country run out. But
no, but it will ultimately probably help move along some of the surplus of crops here in the United States.
Yeah. All righty then.
So that's what we got.
All right, well, that's it for this edition of CropLife Retail Week. We'll see you next week. If you have questions or comments about today's episode of Retail Week, contact us by email or Twitter, or type your message in the comment section below.
Your feedback is important to us. We'll try our best to address your thoughts in next week's episode.
And be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel.